Hi, my name is Olivia Fox Pedraza, and I am an architecture professor at Universidad Central Coquimbo, Chile. In this presentation, I will share an academic experience developed within the Architecture Design Studio focused on the exploration of floating projects as a response to the challenges that climate change poses to coastal cities. The experience takes the metropolitan area of La Serena and Coquimbo as a case study. This territory is considered one of the Chilean coastal areas most vulnerable to sea level rise. Within the framework of the design studio entitled Contemporary Project and Emerging Programs, this academic experience is presented as a practical case study. This course is part of the fourth year of the architecture program. Its main objective is to encourage experimentation and innovation. Students are invited to explore new thematic, spatial, technological, and formal possibilities for architectural projects. The studio understands architecture not only as construction but also as speculation, research, and critical imagination. Climate change is irreversibly transforming ecosystem and represents one of the most critical global challenges of our time. Its impacts are becoming increasingly visible, especially in coastal territories. Millions of people living in low-lying coastal areas are exposed to future risks. These consequences include permanent flooding, coastal erosion, loss of infrastructure, and disruptions to both urban and ecological systems. In this context, coastal cities will need to adapt through new urban architectural and territorial strategies. Studies developed by the Ministry of Environment and the Climate Risk Atlas identify Coquimbo Bay as one of the territories most exposed to sea level rise and storm surges. The metropolitan area of La Serena and Coquimbo has historically expanded over low coastal lands. Areas, wetlands, public infrastructure, and coastal ecosystem could be seriously affected in the coming decades. Faced with this scenario, the studio proposed reflecting on the sea, not only as a border but also as a possible extension of inhabitable territory. The concept of moratorium became central to the development of the studio. This notion expands the traditional understanding of territory by incorporating the ocean as a cultural, productive, ecological, and projective space. The guiding question of the course was: it is possible to imagine new ways of inhabiting the sea in response to climate change scenarios? Students explored floating, semi-floating, and amphibious systems capable of adapting to dynamic environmental conditions. The studio incorporated the study of both historical and contemporary references related to floating architecture. Students explored the Japanese metabolist movement of the 1960s. Particular attention was given to the visions of Tange and Kikutake, who imagined cities over the sea as a response to post-war urban and environmental crises. At the same time, recent initiatives such as Oceanics and Maldives Floating City were analyzed as contemporary examples of resilient coastal urbanism. These references allowed students to discuss both the opportunities and the limitations of floating urban futures. The study methodology was structured in five main stages. First, the study of references, speculative projects, and floating urban visions. Second, interdisciplinary lectures with specialists in oceanography, coastal ecosystem, and climate change. Third, field visits and territorial exploration throughout Coquimbo Bay. Fourth, experimental exercises and the development of floating prototypes. And finally, the design of situated architectural proposals. This methodology connected territorial observation, research, experimentation, and architectural design. One of the main challenges of the studio was understanding that design over the sea requires working with a fluctuating and unstable environment. For this reason, projects considered variables such as wave direction, ocean currents, salinity, solar radiation, winds, bathymetry, and tidal variations. The studio also discussed waste management, water and energy supply system, and the environmental impacts of floating infrastructures. This approach expanded the architectural perspective toward a more systemic and ecological understanding of design. The projects developed by the students addressed multiple scales and programs. These included marine research centers, floating agricultural markets, resilient housing systems, cultural infrastructure, shelters for women, ecosystem restoration centers, and productive coastal facilities. Each proposal explored specific climate adaptation strategies from social, environmental, and territorial perspectives. From a pedagogical perspective, this experience allowed us to understand the architectural studio as a laboratory for research and critical speculation. The architectural project ceased to be only a formal exercise. Instead, it became a tool for addressing complex environmental challenges. At the same time, the experience reinforced interdisciplinary collaboration, territorial observation, and the ability to imagine possible futures from local contexts. In conclusion, this experience revealed several important lessons. First, floating projects represent an opportunity to experiment with new relationships between architecture, technology, and nature. Second, they highlight the importance of interdisciplinary collaboration in addressing contemporary climate challenges. And finally, they demonstrate how architectural education can become a space for imagining resilient futures and developing new forms of territorial thinking. Rather than providing definitive answers, the studio opened questions about how coastal territories may be inhabited in the future.